whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So ask yourself, how can I? In whatever it is that you want to do, whatever industry, ask yourself the question, how can I, rather than say I can't. And if you say that to yourself, no matter what age you are, whether you're 18 or 20 or 30, 40, 50, 60, I know I've helped people that are 70 and they've only just started getting into property in their 70s, right? And that's because they didn't ask how can I back then, but they're asking it now. And it's not too late. So ask yourself, how can I? Think you can rather than think you can't, and watch what happens.
In 1837, Horace Mann created the education system, a system at the time designed to pump out factory workers and professors. The same system that is still being used today in the 21st century. Now, Mann's system is backfiring. We are being moulded by the same industrial system that has existed for close to 200 years. That system delivers us into a digital economy that has no need of our outdated skills. This isn't our teachers' fault. This isn't the government's fault. This is due to a rapidly changing world full of technology and unforeseen circumstances. And us Gen Zs are caught in the middle. Welcome to the Driven Young podcast, the podcast for stressed, overwhelmed young Australians, teaching you practical life skills you can implement now to set yourself up in life. And now your host, Byron Dempsey.
Welcome back to the Driven Young podcast, and today we are talking real estate and property. Is it possible for young people to get into the market? And why should we? To discuss this, I am joined by Andrew Bodnar, co-founder of Kingdom Development. With over 16 years experience, Andrew is a veteran of property investment. His ability to spot the new market opportunities led him to start and sell his own real estate company and financial consulting firm before applying his expertise to the property development world. Last year alone, Andrew and his team purchased 111 properties. They now have over $500 million worth of real estate in Kingdom Development, and their company has been evaluated at $75 million. So the point is, Andrew knows what he's talking about. And best of all, he is super passionate about helping young people get into the market. They do this by offering a crowdsourcing solution where people can purchase shares of property without needing a massive unattainable deposit. But we will discuss that in detail in the episode. In this episode, we cover how Andrew got started in property. Is it possible for young people to get into the market? The 3 steps needed to get started. Developing the right mindset. His crowdsourcing strategy. Our favorite investment books. And much more. This podcast is sponsored by Kingdom Development, and I really hope you get some value out of this conversation. I learned so much from Andrew, and as you'll hear at the end, if you are in Australia and want to begin your property journey, he is more than happy to help you. He even gives out his personal phone number and personal email address at the end of the show so you can contact him. As per usual, DM me if you enjoy this episode or enjoy the show. I love receiving your messages. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts if you have time, and make sure to check out Kingdom Development. All the links are in the show notes below. Now, over to Andrew. Andrew, welcome so much to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Looking forward to this episode, going really niche into real estate and property. And we'll get into all that fun stuff, do a bit of how young people can get into the property market, even in Sydney or expensive cities, wherever they are, because it feels very unrealistic to us. You know, I think the average housing price is $850,000 in Sydney or something ridiculous, which is just very discouraging for younger people. So I'm excited to talk about that. But before we get into that, I'd love to know a little bit about your story and what you did after high school and your failures and everything in between.
Sure. Thanks for having me again. And basically for me, it was really, my passion was actually basketball in high school. And I got a scholarship to go to America and play over there at the age of 15. And when I went over there, I realized how much better they are than what we are. And they are next level amazing. And taller, more athletic, the whole lot. And for my height and for my skill level, I thought I was really good in Australia, but they were amazing next level. So for me, I had an amazing experience getting a scholarship, playing over there at a young age. And I don't see that as a failure, but I realized then that basketball was not my future for the next 20 years. And so I came back home and I said to my parents, all those years I've invested into basketball, I don't think basketball is going to be what I do in my adult life. And they said, what do you want to do? And at the time, I'd only ever played the board game Monopoly. And my mother had tickets for a seminar by a guy named Peter Spann, who spoke about flipping property and doing renovations. And I was 17 at the time. And I went with my mother to this seminar, 4-day seminar on flipping property, doing options, real estate investing. And I was the youngest in the room out of 3,000. And
3,000?
3,000 people. 4 days? Yeah, 4 days. And this was from 9 a.m. till midnight. So full intensive course explaining how to make money out of property. And this was around 2001. So I'd just come back from America. I'd only ever played Monopoly. So I loved real estate from a board game point of view, but I didn't understand real estate as an adult. And so I then started, after that seminar, really researching real estate and reading a lot of books. So Think and Grow Rich became one of my favorite books. Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
The two classics.
And then his board game as well, which is Cash Flow.
Cash Flow, it's a great game.
Board game. I play that with a lot of my clients and with young kids, teaching them about savings, about equity, about planning their future with property and investing. So a great board game to teach.
Highly recommend young people get on that.
I love that book so
much.
It
actually really flips your mind to go, oh, so if I get my passive income greater than my expenses,
you're a free man.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Out of the rat race.
Yeah, it's like Monopoly on steroids.
Exactly. Like exactly what I say to people. I say it's Monopoly on steroids. And so basically that was, as an 18-year-old, I just soaked that up like a big sponge, and I just, anything I get my hands on to read, learn, seminars. So basically at the end of year 11, I basically decided real estate was what I wanted to do. And so at the start of year 12, I went and studied real estate at TAFE, and I actually got a job 1 week before year 12 started. And I said to my parents, what should I do? Should I take this job or should I finish year 12? And they said, what do you want to do after you finish school? I said, real estate. So, well, you might as well take the job now then, save a year of extra money. And so I actually quit at the start of year 12 and got into real estate. Most parents probably wouldn't recommend that, but my parents were very supportive of, my self-employed ambitions to get ahead and basically do real estate from a young age. And so I got into real estate at the age of 18. And in my first year in real estate, I worked 3 jobs. I was doing mortgage broking at nighttime, like referring to mortgage brokers. I was doing real estate during the day and pizza delivery.
Oh, really?
And I saved up my deposit for my unit in that first year.
In 1 year?
In 1 year. And I bought a unit when I was 18. So I had 3 jobs going and bought my first unit in Hurstville, which is over closer to the Sydney. I bought a unit there for $271,500. I still remember the price today after 20 years. And I bought that at auction. I spent 30 grand renovating it, so it cost me about 300, and I sold it a few years later for 400. Wow. I made $100,000 in real estate in my first transaction, and that was my first taste of cash flow on steroids.
That's where you went, oh my god, leverage.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, look how powerful this is.
Exactly.
Like
how hard do you work to make $100,000 in savings? And I made that in a 6-week renovation job that I held for a year or 2.
Yeah, and you were still working during that year.
And still working at the time.
So you still had an income.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, and that's the power of property, or like anything that you can leverage, really.
Exactly right. So after that experience, and it was a great success story, because it was first, I got the first property and it worked. And so I went and bought another unit and did the same thing in Mortdale. Then I did another unit in Liverpool, then another unit in Glenfield, then a townhouse, then a house. So I did about 7 renovations from the year 2001 to 2008 while working in real estate and doing mortgage broking at the same time. I quit the pizza delivery job because I thought, I'm making good money from this now. Yeah. So I wasn't working in pizza delivery, but I was enjoying that whole real estate industry, doing work in the day, sales during the day, and then buying my own property and renovating at night. And then around 2009, I had one of my clients in real estate who was a builder. And he said to me, you've done really well with renovating. You've made good money out of that, but there's more money to be made in building and doing development. And I said to him, look, I don't have any experience as a developer. I'm only a renovator. Like, I know how to cosmetically improve something.
To clarify, renovating is improving something that's already exists, and developing is like from the ground up.
Yeah, from the ground up, from an empty piece of land to a block of units or whatever it is. And I said to him, look, I don't have that experience. And he said, you find the property, because you're in real estate, you find the land, the development, whatever the situation is, you've got an eye for it, so you find it, and then I'll build it for you, and we'll split the profit 50-50. And I thought, it's not a bad idea. It's a way to leverage my time. So I started looking for blocks of land of 600 square meters or more where you could build a duplex or townhouses. And we actually did together 16 duplexes from 2008 to 2014. Wow. And completed them. And we were making an average of $100,000 per house on each side once it's complete. So
$1.6 million.
$1.6 million for my share in 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, wow.
And that's when I really learned how to leverage time, because my money was working for me rather than me working for the money. And I had multiple projects on the go at the same time. And at that point, I thought, I don't need to work in real estate anymore. I want to be actually doing development full time. And so I then spent my time looking for development for myself and for my friends and family. And that's how we started Kingdom. So in 2015, 2016, people had seen what I'd made out of doing these duplexes and townhouses and these smaller projects. And they started asking me to do it for them, like a consultant, project manager. And I would find the site for them, project manage it for them, select the builder, organize the finance for them, because I had a finance background, and then also do the sales, because we had sales. And they were literally I was helping people leverage property and make money out of development. And then we basically came together as a bigger group with about 30 or 40 people at the time in 2015, and we started Kingdom. And Kingdom's, the mindset or the idea of Kingdom was to, as like a crowdsource funding type idea, to come together and co-own a development together. So what you could maybe not afford on your own, as a group, we could afford together.
Yeah.
And that leverage allowed us to do bigger projects. So we started doing units and townhouses and land subdivision and stuff like that. And it basically
just opens up more doors.
Opens up more doors, totally. And so we went from having one project at a time, worth a couple $1 million, to now having 27 projects around the country, $500 million in end value, over 500 units, hundreds of house and land packages, over 500 now investors and clients. So we've really scaled the business and used that leverage to take it to where it is today. And it was just from one simple idea back then to leverage time, basically, which is what we learned from cash flow, from the board game and from the book.
Yeah.
So I basically just used what Robert Kiyosaki taught us 20 years ago and put that into action.
Yeah. Amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I always love when you hear businesses that kind of start with no intention, like they just kind of organically start. I find that's usually how the best businesses happen.
Totally word of mouth, organic, no advertising, just getting results, and then people tell people because you deliver for somebody, they tell somebody else, and that's the best word of mouth.
And did you go towards more the crowdfunding because it's more profitable per person, or because you thought the property market's getting really expensive, this is a way that people can get in without needing $100,000 up front?
Yeah, correct. More so what you said in the latter, because property prices are advertised in the millions these days, and the average price in Sydney is now $850 or above, like getting close to $1 million. So people are automatically thinking, I can't afford it. And one thing I learned from Think and Grow Rich, which is one of my favorite books, is rather than saying I can't, say how can I? So my idea was, how can I make it more affordable for the uni students, for the young people that are coming out of their studies, about to get into the workforce and have zero deposit, and probably actually in the negative because they got a HEX debt.
Yeah.
Right. And I was wanting to inspire them to do that because that's the next generation. So I thought, if we can do that, then how much better is that for us being able to make property more affordable? So my idea was, if we can make property affordable in that 20 to 30, 40 grand mark, and give people that crowdfunding type ownership where your name is on the title, you part own the property, you're in a cooperation of making the thing an end success, and then everybody has skin in the game, and there's a sense of accountability as well. So you've got the real estate agent invested in the deal, the mortgage broker, the builder, the banker, then you've got the architect. And so it's like creating that sense of family. Everyone's got something in it. And by doing it that way, it's not like you're all committed into one project on your own, and you actually allows you to diversify better. So that's basically the idea behind it.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think it's a brilliant idea. I think it's very needed. Yeah, because as I mentioned, like if the average property price is $850,000, let's say 10% deposit you need $85 grand in cash just to get some skin in the game.
Not including stamp duty and all the other charges.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, obviously there are a few incentives for first home buyers, but it's like, I mean, when you look at that kind of money, it's like, how do you save up 85 grand?
Exactly.
And get that in. And 100%. So I think this is where it's very exciting. Yeah. And so you're saying you can essentially, how many people, like, do you usually have, like 4 or 5 people?
In each project, depending on the size of it, of course.
Yeah.
But on average, we have between 15 to 20 investors per project. And our projects average from as small as about $2.5 million up to about 15 million. So between sort of 3 million to 15 million is average size. And that ranges from an old block of units that we're doing a renovation, to a land subdivision, to townhouses, to a block of units as a high rise. So there's a wide variety of product for people to choose from. And we've got 27 projects around the country. We've got 5 in Perth, 1 in Adelaide, 1 in Melbourne, 1 in Queensland, and about 18 or so in Sydney. So, it gives a diversity across the country. And my goal is to basically, if you think of the most successful franchises in the food industry, like McDonald's and KFC, they've leveraged off making things simple and then copy and pasting it everywhere. So you see McDonald's on every corner. So my goal is to have a Kingdom on every corner. And the way to do that is to make property affordable, but also to make it accessible to people who normally thought they had to wait 10 years before they could do something. They can now do it in day 1 rather than day 3,000. Right? And that's what makes it really glad.
Yeah. And I love that. And do you think young people, or I mean just anyone in general, often will see this impossible goal of getting $100,000 or $85,000 deposit and just kind of palm it off and go, oh well, there's no point in even trying. And
it's in the too hard basket.
And they just won't even save, or they just won't even bother about trying to get into property or start investing.
Totally. And the best way to encourage them out of that mentality is to give them a mindset of that it is possible. And the way that we do that is like very simple. I've got a young guy that started with us last year in July. His name's Sean, And he basically came and he said, I've got no deposit at the moment, but I'd like to get my first home in Sydney, specifically in the Baulkham Hills, that area. And you need $1 million to get a house in that area, affluent. Right? And I said to him, okay, so that's your goal. Now, how are we going to achieve that goal? And so we then went through the tasks of how can you earn money in Kingdom without a deposit, right? So if you've got no deposit, you want to get into the property market, how does a young person straight out of uni start? And so I gave him the task of finding projects for us, because young people are always on the internet, they're always on the phone, they're always looking online. So I said to him, look, this is something that you already do. So go online and every night look for properties around the country between $3 million to $15 million that you think have development potential, whether it's a renovation or building or whatever it is, and send it to me. And if you send it to me and we end up buying it, I'll give you 1% ownership of that property at no cost to you.
Wow.
He thought, that's a great deal. I'm going to get into the property market. I'm going to get 1% ownership, and I haven't even had to put any money down. So he spent hours upon hours every night for the last 3 to 6 months between July last year and Christmas, just searching online for properties. And he sent me on average about 50 deals a month.
Wow.
Right? So we're talking about 500 properties a year. And out of those 50 that he sent me per month, we have bought 4.
Wow.
Yeah? And he has earned himself 1% ownership in 4 different properties. But then it gets even better for him. He actually then said, I actually want to work with Kingdom full time. Can you teach me how to project manage? So now we've got a young guy who had no property, now has four ownership in 4 separate properties, and is now learning how to project manage these properties, earn even more money. And he bought his house last month in Baulkham Hills for $1 million. He got his deposit, and this is all in 9 months working with us.
And that's I just want to unpack.
And that's a great person to interview as well.
I mean, I want to unpack the way he's approached that.
Yeah.
Like, why did you hire him full time? Probably because he showed huge potential.
Yeah.
He showed he was hustling. He was driven. He's searching for. You've given him an opportunity, and he's taking advantage of it.
Correct.
How many people would just be like, "Oh, I can't be bothered to do that."
Yeah.
Oh no, that's too much work. Because you might not buy any of the properties, and I'll make no money.
Yeah, correct. But he saw the potential.
Yeah.
And he didn't give up. And I said no to a lot. But when he found a good one, and then he found another good one, he started to get the traction and the results. And then when he got those results, it gave him more motivation, more encouragement. And now he's just taken off. And he's one of our best producers in the whole company. And he's only 25.
Wow.
So that just proves that anybody with the mind, attitude, that drive can be successful in any industry, not just property. Anything you put your mind to. Yeah. So that's really exciting.
Yeah. No.
And that's what I want to do more of around the whole country. If I can find another 100 of him, we can have a McDonald's in every corner. Yeah. In that mentality.
Well, that's something I'm looking at doing not that, but I'm looking at like kind of bringing together really talented young people. Yeah. Because for me, it's not even, you don't even have to be that talented. You just got to be driven.
That's exactly right.
You just got to be like,
exactly right. It doesn't require a uni degree.
Yeah.
It doesn't require any special, you just got to be driven. You got to want it.
Yeah. You just got to want it and put in the hours knowing that there could be potentially no return.
Exactly right.
But there could be massive return as well.
Exactly right.
And that's where, a lot of money can be made when it's high risk, or it's just like it's not stable.
Some of the best inventions in the world have been time invested before any result. And all the great apps and Facebook and all the famous apps that have been created, TikTok and Messenger and all the other stuff that's been created, was from people spending time hoping that it would work, and then it actually did work, and now they've taken off. Yeah. And it's the same thing you apply to any industry: property, finance, social media. If you apply that time to it, the sky's the limit. Yeah. It's whatever you put in, you get back.
100%.
So, yeah.
And this is all, Think and Grow Rich sort of stuff
exactly
as well.
Right, yeah.
Which is a great book if you haven't read it. I mean, it's a classic book.
I've read it 7 times and I love it.
Search personal development book. Yeah. And, that's like the number one that comes up. It's it's a great book. Yeah. But I did want to go back and just talk, before we go into, I guess, more Kingdom stuff, just like why property. Obviously, we just heard your story. Yeah. You're a big fan of the leverage, the way you can make money quite fast. You can, time for money, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But if we're stripping it really far back, why should we be looking at property? Okay. Like, what are the benefits of property over stocks or starting your own business or something?
The best way I like to explain it to people in the most simplest term is again, coming back to leverage. And that is, if you go and buy a share on the stock market, you need physical cash to buy those shares. And usually, in most cases, you can't borrow against those shares unless they're really famous popular shares, like in the top 50. Then you might be able to have a margin loan of 50% or so against the value, right? But really, they're not really lent against, or minimal, right? So whatever you put in is almost what you have applied to the investment. So if you're putting in $100,000, for example, in the share market, and say the share market goes up by 10% every year, just for example's sakes, you make $10,000 a year. But there's no leverage there, right? So maybe you did leverage a little bit, so you might make $15,000 a year. Or you might be really creative and pick some little small name stock that takes off, but you don't know for sure, right? But with property, That same $100,000 can get you a loan for $1 million, right?
And
so you've now leveraged it at 10 to 1.
Yeah, let's break this down as simple as possible, because I understand this concept and I think it's really powerful.
Yeah.
Let's use round numbers. Let's say you've got $1 million worth of property and that goes up to 1.1 million. You've now made $100,000 there.
Correct.
You can now say to a bank, look, I've got $1.1 million worth of property and they'll give you a loan, because they know if you can't service that loan, they can take your property.
Correct.
So the more properties you get, the more properties you can, it's momentum, right?
Exactly, momentum. But coming back to that, that actually example of what you just said, $1 million becomes 1.1. If you only started with 100,000 and your $1 million property that you paid 100,000 deposit for is now worth 1.1, you've actually made 100% on investment, not 10%.
Yeah.
You've actually, because you only paid 100.
Yeah.
So you've doubled your money. Now, how long does it take you to double your money in the stock market?
Yeah.
Now, in that property, you could do that in 6 months or less. So you can actually make 100% possibly, depending on buying right, getting it at the right price. And we're talking about the return on your cash, not the return on how much the property's gone up by, but on how much you're out of pocket by.
I'll give you an example. And look, this is, don't get too excited for listeners listening to this. This is freak. You know, the market's booming right now. And this was in Byron Bay, which has just been going crazy. My mate's girlfriend bought a property for $350,000. In 1 year, it's gone to 450.
Nice.
That's insane.
That's fantastic.
That's insane.
I'll tell you a story about us in Byron Bay. We, on separate to Kingdom, we just bought a property in Byron Bay with a family, with a few friends, as a retirement place, just sort of like a getaway. And we paid $2.4 million for it in 2018. We sold it at the middle of 2020, so only 18 months later for 4.2.
What?
No renovations. We didn't spend any money on it. That's how hot Byron Bay market was.
Oh my God.
We made $1.8 million just on the hype of Byron Bay.
Oh, that's depressing, but also amazing.
So, but that just goes to show, if you buy right, and now we actually put into that deal $700,000 of our own money of the 2.4 and borrowed the rest. So we made $1.8 million on an investment of $700,000. That's actually nearly 250%.
Yeah, so you tripled your money almost.
In 18 months.
Far out. Right? That is mental.
So it just goes to show, like buying right.
And obviously there's a lot of luck and timing involved, but also if you're not in the market, you can't get any luck. Right?
If you're not in it, you can't win it. So that's basically, that's why I love buying property.
And so I think it's quite, you know, it can get very exciting once you've got one property, then two, and then you can kind of leverage, you can leverage all that to grow more and more. But I think the real problem that young people are going is, how the hell do I get my first one? Like, I guess once I get my first one, then I can kind of go up. And do you recommend, like, my mindset is, you know, live lowest possible needs, get an investment property, then you can start leveraging that, get more property, rather than just buy a property to live in. Look, when you buy it to live in, and obviously you've read Rich Dad Poor Dad and you've played the cash flow board game, your home is actually considered a liability, not an asset. The reason being is because it doesn't provide income, right? Unless you put a granny flat at the back or something, but it doesn't provide income. That's because you're not renting it out.
You're not renting it out, and you're not leveraging it. And most people spend a lot on their home, and that's dead money, if that makes sense. And so basically, the way I like to look at it is, if you can have that minimalistic attitude at the start, I'm not saying to not enjoy life, because obviously you want to travel, have a nice house, have nice cars, all of that stuff. But if you can live minimalistic at the start and really leverage your money into investment properties rather than into your home, you can really make your money work for you, and then enjoy it 5, 10 years, 20 years later.
Well, that's the important part, right?
That's it. Yeah.
And that's why, because I just taught a money and finance section last weekend for an hour and a half for like 14 to 19-year-olds. And I just hammer them. You have time. The one thing you have everyone else, the one thing you have over me, over everyone else in this room, is you've got more time. 100%. Which means you can use compound interest, which is obvious. And we show them like, we do 45 years. If you invest $100 a month for 45 years at 10%, here's bang. Here's 20%, bang. And I think $400 a year at 20% return. No, $400 a month at 20% over 45 years, you get like $186 million.
Pretty good.
Which is, not bad, right?
The power of compounding.
Yeah. And did you want to explain compounding real quick and how that works with property?
Yeah, so the way that I've done it in property is exactly what you were mentioning before, how you said leverage off one property into the second. So last year, we hit a milestone, and that milestone was we bought 111 properties in the 1 year.
Wow.
Now, most people don't even buy 1 or 2 properties in their lifetime, and our goal was to buy over 100. And this was during Corona. So this was during when people were actually fearful of the market. People were negative. People were saying the market's going to drop 20, 30%. And one of my philosophies, which also Warren Buffett teaches, is when everyone's fearful, that's the time to be greedy. And when people are greedy, that's probably the time to be fearful. Yeah. And so while everyone was scared, I actually spent a lot of last year buying everything that I could. And I didn't have many people to compete with, because there was no one at the auctions, because everyone was in lockdown, and there was not many people buying property because they were scared or negative. And so we actually bought all these properties last year that are now worth 15 to 20% more only 12 months later, because we actually striked while the iron was hot, in my opinion. And so now this year we've actually said, let's try and get to 500 properties this year. And if you think of compounding is every time you buy another property, that money is now working for you at double compared to the first one. So the third one's working at 3 times the rate, and the fourth one, and so on. And so if you leverage all of those and your borrowing is matching your deposit to an extent, you've got that LVR. If you understand what LVR is, the loan to value ratio. So like we said at the start, you put 100 grand in, you can maybe borrow up to $1 million. And by doing that, we've now got all these properties around the country that are working for us. So money is now working for us rather than us working for money.
Yeah.
And we're getting rent from all these properties too.
Right. We're just talking about market value going up.
We're not talking about rent.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. So we're getting 4 to 5% rental yields across the country, and this is people that they can't afford to buy, and so that you've always got that rent coming in because they're not in a position to leave. And so it gives you good certainty. Even if you're scared about the market dropping, you know that the rent will help you cover the interest. And interest rates are at record lows. So it's even better time to borrow. When can you borrow at 2.5%?
Yeah.
Or even less in some banks.
Yes, because right now the government wants as much money in the economy as they can.
Exactly.
Because of coronavirus.
Yeah. Stimulation of the economy is, in my mind, one of the best reasons to get into property. Because when you see the government spending money on roads, infrastructure, a new airport here in Sydney.
And construction has gone absolutely...
It's created so
where
much
I live
jobs.
In the Shire, I think it's the number one industry by a landslide, construction.
There you go. So all of that is just basically push the market up even higher. And that's the reason why we are at the record prices we are today. So,
yeah. No, that's huge. And I think it's such a powerful concept to understand.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to, often when you start talking about this, I always go, are they understanding this or not? Because for you did a 4-day seminar, right? And that's where you kind of went, wow. And it was 4 days. You're saying 15-hour days.
Yeah.
So it's how do you get this across in a 1-hour podcast?
Yeah.
How do you get that excitement across? How do you kind of teach them the stuff they need to know, or just the basics and stuff? Where do you think young people should be starting when it comes to this? Should they just start off by listening to more podcasts, reading books, investing in themselves before they start going into the market? Yeah.
I think the best way, if I was to give people 3 simple tips, is education is the first key. Because before you can make money, you need to know how to make money. All right. Before you can make money work for you, you need to know how to generate it in the first place. So education comes down to simple things. Now, most people say go to uni to get educated, right? And I'm not knocking uni. Uni has its place because there's professions and things that require you to go to university if you want to be a doctor, a lawyer,
engineer, all those ones,
but education, in terms of how to make money and make money work for you, is not taught in uni or high school. Not to the extent that it needs to be. You get business studies or economics, but not to the extent of making money work for you.
It's
very basics, right? It's super basic, right?
Well, they cover all this random stuff you don't really need to know. They don't even cover this leverage.
Yeah, exactly.
You learn about all the different tax systems in Norway and all these worlds. You're like, what?
Completely unrelated topics.
Yeah.
So basically, pick up a book. So if you want to know how to make money work for you, pick up a book. And that if you simply just go to Amazon or any of those main book websites, and you just type in, real estate, or type in finance, or type in investing, and they'll give you the recommendations of the top 5 bestsellers in the world. Now, you and I have spoken already about Think and Grow Rich. That's a great book.
Yeah.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's another great book.
I should preface, Think and Grow Rich isn't just a money one.
That's right.
It's like a whole
mindset and everything.
Mindset, personal development.
Yeah.
It's a weird book, to be honest. It's really weird, but it's interesting.
Richest Man in Babylon. That's
I was about to say, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
I think I'd almost start with Richest Man in Babylon because it's just the importance of saving 10%.
Correct, yeah.
And that's the first thing I teach in the money and finance section.
Yeah.
At bare minimum, whatever you're doing, save 10%.
That was also my favorite books.
Yeah.
So, that's what my parents taught me from a young age. From 12 years old, they taught me about saving 10%. Even before I knew real estate, but just to put 10% aside.
Yeah. It's nothing to do with real estate. It's purely just financial habits.
That's right. Those are some great books. So education is the first step out of the 3 steps, education. Then if someone's telling you what you should do with their money, check first that they know how to make money themselves. Because a lot of people listen to their peers who are actually not necessarily rich or successful themselves, and they just listen to them out of fear. Right. So actually, if you want to be successful in social media, go and study Mark Zuckerberg or people who are successful in that. If you want to be successful in real estate, go study successful real estate investors. If you want to be successful in the stock market, study Warren Buffett.
Exactly.
And so don't take advice from people who make less money than what you want to make. In my opinion, that's my
well, especially if you're talking about making money.
Yeah, correct.
Like if you want to learn how to be, you know, a surfboarder, you can learn from a pro surfboarder.
Pro surf, exactly right.
Surf coach.
Exactly
sort of
right. Exactly same.
And this is why I have experts like you on the podcast.
Thank you.
As much as I love to talk about real estate and property and stuff, I don't even have real estate yet. It's definitely one of my goals, and I've got a lot of. I'm focusing on the business right now because if I can leverage that, I can invest it future on. But I can bring on people like you and other awesome people who can cover all these topics.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And I will say, and with no disrespect to anyone listening out there, I think it includes your parents. Yeah. If your parents aren't good with money or something, they're saying, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that," and they're not really good with it. It's like, well, should you really be listening to them?
Yeah, it's true. And it hurts sometimes to say that. Yeah. And that's why I didn't say it, but it's actually true. You know, because
it's just reality.
In the end, it is reality. Parents, they want what's best for their children, but sometimes they do it to their own detriment because they think about being fearful or scared, or they're worried that they're going to lose. And then you can't be afraid of failure. Michael Jordan missed many shots compared to the ones he made. My mindset is failing forward. Learn from your mistakes, get back up, keep going. So no one's perfect. And it's not about trying to get it right every time. It's about you have a mindset of not giving up and a mindset of, do you want to be a sheep or a shepherd? Yeah. All right. So do you want to flock with the turkeys or fly with the eagles? Yeah. Right. So in my mind, I want to fly with the eagles. You know, I want to be the best that I can be in whatever I put my mind to, whatever industry that is. And if you have that attitude, that's all part of step number one, because it also comes back to education. If you educate yourself right and then apply it, which is step number two. So apply what you learned. So now you've learned it. Now start applying it. So now put into practice what you've read. Start saving that 10% like you teach with the young kids. Start, on top of saving the 10%, start researching about property or the stock market or whatever.
By the way, I say save 30, 40% at this age.
Exactly.
When you're
as
like,
minimum, right?
Oh my God. When you're 16, 17, you've got no expenses. You should be able
living
to save.
with your parents.
I save like 50%.
Yeah.
More
Exactly
even.
right. Exactly
It's
right.
10% minimum.
Yeah, exactly right.
You know, I think
Exactly
it's
right.
huge. You save that. And it's so easy now because you can automate everything. I'm not even good at saving. I set up an automation like 2 years ago and it's just been rolling through my accounts.
Just tell it what to do.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Literally. And it does everything for me.
Exactly right. So I think just applying what you learn is easy in step number two. If you apply it, then step number three is basically it's like you've seen the results now because you've learned how to do it, then you've applied it, and then step number three is how do you then manage it long term. So what's your goals? Like how far do you want to go with it? In any industry, whatever the industry is, where do you take step number three? Because step number three is your reality. Step number three is what happens next, and that's the real sticking point.
Yeah, the three steps.
Yeah.
And do you think, because you made the point earlier, like,
Wait, is it okay to?
Yeah.
Come
Yeah. We can just cut this out.
I didn't know if the noise. Yeah.
No, yeah, all good.
Huh? Go. Byron, Maz. G'day. We just paused the recording, so it's okay. Can you close it so we don't hear the noise? Because it has the traffic noise. Maz works with us as well.
Good man. How are you?
I met Byron through Nick.
Is Nick here?
No, not today, no.
No, today?
Yeah. We won't bother going anywhere. We'll be finished in about 20, 30 minutes, but then Alex will be here in 30 minutes. So I got to, and I need you to take it back to Evan as soon as I sign it with Alex. That's Byron. He works with us as well. Another story of the young, not the young guy I was telling you about, but he also found his first project and has made $250,000 working with us since July last year. Really? Just doing what I was telling you, exactly the same, looking for properties, doing the same thing. So that's how Maz started 5 years ago with me. He was in security. I've known him since 10 years old through basketball, and he basically just said to me, I want to change my life. I want to buy my first property. He was renting for 15 years with his wife and 4 kids. And now in 5 years working with us, he's got 4 properties, 5, he's got shares in a lot of different projects. He's brought on, like complete change life story. Exactly. Yeah. You interviewed probably 10 people like him in my company, and they literally had nothing when they started. And I taught them how to make money out of property. My
whole life.
Yeah.
Until we started
Yeah. I know. He's made more than $5 million with us in 5 years. Really? Yeah. That's what I teach. Yeah, right there. Yeah. I'm done. Yeah. So my company, I've grown from $0, right, with an idea, to now it's been valued at $75 million in 6 years, right? And we've got $450 million worth of property around the country, and that just started from an idea of how to teach people rather than just taking money and just doing it for other people. We actually empowered them and taught them how to do it. Right. And then that gave them the sense of, having their own business. So I guess we could talk about that as well. But
for sure.
Yeah.
I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Jump back into it.
Yeah.
We'll go to that soon. But I just want to say, You mentioned it before, but we're just talking about how like you don't have to sacrifice your lifestyle in order to, you know, kind of achieve financial freedom when you get in the property market. Do you still think that's true? And do you think that's a bit of a myth that people have kind of tricked themselves into thinking?
Yeah, totally. Whatever you believe, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. That's from Think and Grow Rich as well. So if you think you can't, then you can't. And if you think you can, then find a way to do it. So my mindset is, you know, how do I get something that is normally considered unattainable or unaffordable? How do I make it a reality? And so if you're a young person listening and you're thinking, oh yeah, he's just, you know, he's obviously just lucky, or he just had a good break or something, he started 10 years ago and now the prices are too expensive. When I started, people thought they were too expensive back then too.
Well, that's
right.
it. Yeah.
So what you got to think about is, what is the actual chance? And the chance is up to you. So if you put your mind to it, the chances are very high. And so then once you put your mind to it and you learn, like we said in the steps, you learn how to do, read, study, then apply it. And then the third part is the results. And when you get those results, it gives you that sense of accomplishment, like, hey, I actually did it. I actually made it happen. And then after that, it's just copy and paste.
Yeah.
It's just cookie cutter. It's duplicatable.
Well, once you've got your first, then you can leverage that to get your second and third, fourth. It's really the first one is
It's
the
just a
hard one.
number. It's just a number.
And I think that is a totally a mindset a lot of young people have. Is obviously it is still difficult to get into the property market, and it is like so. A lot of people go, "Oh, this is so unattainable. I'm not even going to bother."
Yeah,
I'd rather just travel. I'd rather have fun, which is still good, and you still do that. But like I've got a friend who's 23, and she does a lot of stuff in shares. She's got an investment property. I think she's got $180,000 in her portfolio, and she goes wakeboarding and has fun and travels all the time. Like it doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your lifestyle,
not at all.
which I think is a very common myth.
Yeah.
And I think the good point you made was, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. And I think a lot of people just think they can't.
That's right. And you know what? The reason why it's easy to give up is because once you tell yourself you can't do something, whatever it is, whether it's sport related, business related, anything, your mind immediately goes, I can't do it. Sweet, on to the next thought, right? Because you've already shut down any thoughts whatsoever because you've given up, right? You've said, I can't. But as soon as you say, how can I, you actually are putting your mind to work. It now has to do something. It can't just sit there and go, oh, I can't anymore. It now has to think, oh, you've told me, how can I? So that means there's a possibility. So if it's a possibility, how can I do it? And your mind starts then thinking of ideas and being creative, and then reading, and then meeting people, and then networking, and then going to seminars, and then all that stuff. And then all of a sudden you find yourself 20 years later like me, and you've done all this property. And the reason I've done it is because I asked that question 20 years ago of how can I, rather than saying how I can't.
Yeah.
And just one simple question. And that applies to any industry.
100%.
Anything.
And like a great example. So I used to work for these guys called Teach Me About Property, and they specialize in helping Pacific Islanders. So Cook Islander, New Zealander, like Maoris, Pacific Islanders, Samoans and stuff, get into the property market. That was their people. And those people have a long history of renting.
Yeah, super.
And big families. And so I've seen families, they're both, mum and dad are probably on like 50K. A year, so very minimum wage with 8 kids, they're buying properties.
Yeah. How exciting is that?
Yeah.
And it's life-changing.
Yeah.
For their generation and then the next generation and their grandchildren.
Well, they're not doing it for them.
They've broken out of that poverty mentality.
They're not doing it for them.
That's right.
They're doing it for their kids.
For the kids, exactly right.
That's exactly why they're doing it.
And it's an inheritance that they never had before. So.
But point is, if they can do it with like 6 children and a minimum wage, then I'm pretty sure that we can figure out a way to do it as well.
I've had people come see me with bankruptcies, credit card defaults to the hill, bad credit ratings, the whole lot. I've seen people negative 100 grand from HEX debt, and I've helped them through property, through finding the right deal and negotiating and all that stuff. I've helped them make hundreds above that and turn their totally into the green from being in the red in number of years. Like it doesn't take 10, 20 years. You can get out of that rat race in 2 to 3 years quite easily with a good strategy. And
is that something you focus on more, like not just having people come to you and doing it for them, but having them come to you and teaching them to do it for them, and then they stay with you, and that kind of
I guess, so it's more about empowering people. So we were talking about this before about how do you if you give someone a fish, you feed them for a day, right? If you teach them how to fish, you feed them for life. And so for me, if I'm only one man and I can only be in one spot at one time, so for me to leverage myself across the country and to be able to buy properties in Perth and Adelaide and Melbourne and Queensland, I need to be able to teach people how to fish, right? Because I can't be over there fishing, right? Because I'm here, and I can't. If I'm working that much, then I'm no longer a free man, right? I'm now a slave to my job.
Yeah.
And so to be
the exact opposite of what you set out to achieve.
Exactly right. So to be a free man, I have to teach people how to fish, and so I've actually empowered them by taking them to property meetings, taking him to meet the architect, taking him to meet the town planner, taking him to meet the real estate agents, inviting them in all the meetings and the whole process from start to finish, so they actually learn how to be a property developer. So they literally come to everything. So it's actually like teaching them how to run their own franchise of property, how to manage their own development. So they're not just giving their money to somebody and saying, here, can you go make my money work for me? But they're actually learning how to make their money work for themselves. And by doing that, I now have a franchisee in each city, each state, each country with my brand, my name, representing what we want to grow and achieve. And I'm teaching them how to copy and paste what I'm doing here. So I've just leveraged my time. And I've taught them how to make money for themselves while we're actually piggybacking off what they found. So they found a great project. They put money into it. We put money into it. And now we've got another project in another city.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, rising tide lifts all boats sort of mentality.
Exactly right.
Which I think traditionally in this industry is very much, they come to you, they do it, then they give the property sort of back.
Correct.
It's very one way.
Correct.
Like I hear people complain about real estate agents all the time and how bad the communication is and stuff.
Yeah.
And my mate's a real estate agent in Byron and he's saying, it's crazy right there. It's crazy there right now.
Totally.
Properties going like crazy right now. And, you got in when COVID kind of hit, which was just like no
one could leave the state, so Byron became the new hotspot.
Yeah, and it seemed obvious. It seems obvious looking back. But man, I remember people going, "Oh, the market's going to crash." Yeah. For like a 3-week period there, everyone's like, "Oh, what do we do? What do we do?"
The world.
Yeah. And then it's true. And most people, unless they already had 4, 5, 6 properties, so if they got another one, it wouldn't hurt as much. Most people who didn't have one weren't willing to take that risk during COVID because if it failed, they couldn't afford it.
Well, they also lost jobs too. There was genuine reasons why people were fearful. A loss of jobs creates that. But in the end, what you've got to realize is that even though there was a loss of jobs, there was not as many a loss of lives as what was predicted. And so if there's not a loss of lives as much as what was predicted, then that means everyone's going to get back to work.
Yeah.
All right. And so that means everything's going to start ticking up again. And the government's helped that by giving all their stimulus and all their financial boostings to really stimulate after that lockdown period. So which made it even better for the property market, which is why it took off even more.
Yeah.
And then rates went down. So then rates went even lower. So it's just like all these combination of positive things to really make it a fantastic turn for this year.
And I don't know if I got a lot of international listeners, so I don't know what it's like worldwide. But like for Australia, where we have like less than 100 deaths or something, or maybe less than 200 deaths.
It's in the hundreds, not in the thousands.
Very minimal. Yeah, very minimal compared to a lot of other countries.
I know other countries have suffered as well, but this property boom is not just happening in Australia. For the people that are listening around the world, what we're talking about can be applied anywhere. It can be applied in any country that you're living in. Obviously, you need to have the right fundamentals behind the country and have good, stimulus. But if you put your mind to it, you can be successful wherever you're based.
Yeah, no, I think it's so powerful, and I think it's such an important thing that we can understand. That my tagline for this podcast is practical life skills we should have been learned in school, and I always never understood why we didn't learn this stuff in school. Even as simple as like how do you get a loan, how do you leverage, what is compounding interest?
Wouldn't it be great if that was taught?
A lot of young people don't even realize what a loan is, or like how do you get deposit, all that sort of stuff. Like the simple, bare simple terminology people don't understand, and it blows my mind. Yeah. It's totally. Like I think it needs to be put into the curriculum for sure. Yeah. But I guess that's something you're interested in, helping younger people, helping the next generation, which is kind of where your whole company started. Yeah. And how do you work in terms of like, how does it work when people come to you? So they come to you, they say, hey, I can't afford a deposit for a property, but I hear I can get like, if I can use this deposit I have, let's say I've got like $25,000. Do you just get like 4 other people $25,000 and that comes to a $100,000 deposit?
That's one way to do it, but there's we actually have some projects that only require $25,000 to $30,000, so they can actually do it on their own. If they get 3 or 4 friends together, they might be able to do something bigger, but they can actually start on their own with as little as 25 to 30 grand. The good thing about doing it as a group, as a network, is that they don't have to worry about mortgage repayments. They don't have to worry about coming up with the money for stamp duty because we cover all those costs as a group. So they're literally buying a share of the property. If you might have heard of other companies that do that in Australia, there's Bricks, which is in Melbourne, and they became popular because they were advertising that they sell a brick. So you literally own one brick, right? But they weren't selling an actual brick, but they were selling like very micro percentages of the property, and that was great for uni students. So we're doing something in more of the development space, whereas they're doing something more of the finished product. But there's great ideas out there, and in the end, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just about applying what you learned and then putting that into practice. If you have that desire, then you can make the money work for you with whatever you've got to start with. Even if you've got negative, call me. If I'll help you get out of the negative because it's just a mindset. And then you learn what to do from there.
Amazing. Yeah. And so why do you recommend, why do you guys choose development over already developed properties? Most simple explanation is if you buy the finished product anywhere in the world, not just Australia,
If you go and buy a unit or a house and it's finished, you're paying retail price. You're paying the final price, right? There's zero discount. And you're competing against 20 or 30 other people at auction or to
it's
buy,
mayhem right now.
Mayhem, right?
Yeah.
So you're not only you're paying retail, but you're probably also paying overs because you're competing against others. So what we're doing is we're creating a way to invest wholesale because we're buying it when it's still in its original state, whether it's run down or it's an old block of land or it's a place where we're going to build units or townhouses. It's in its original form. So that means it hasn't been taken to its highest and best use yet. It's still old, right? So technically, we're getting in at the wholesale price because we're going to make that margin from wholesale to retail, which is usually on average 20 to 25%.
Oh, wow.
Right? So most builders, developers around the country, they work on that margin. So if you can come in as a group, collectively, as a crowdfunding type of way, and you're getting it at the wholesale price as a group, you've effectively bought the property 20 to 25% below what the end value will be once you complete. So that now means you've actually bought into the property market at below the standard entry point. And that's the reason why we chose property development, because you're getting in from that original wholesale price.
And I guess it's just a bit more complicated because you've got all the developments and stuff. But once you've got the systems built in, you've got a team and part of the company, you can kind of automate it.
Correct.
Yeah.
People would probably think McDonald's is complicated.
Yeah.
Right? But it's actually really simple once you've got all the procedures in place. Right? And they've made it simple. But it wasn't easy to create it like that. If it was easy, everyone would have done it. But then after they did it, then people started realizing, hey, other franchises can work too. So I think we're leading in the forefront, just like they led in the food industry. I think we're leading in that industry in terms of teaching people how to start with very little and get into something that is normally considered unattainable or too hard. We're teaching people it's not too hard. It no longer has to be in the too hard basket anymore.
Yeah. And do you think
that's it?
I mean, I feel like this whole conversation can be really summed up into delayed gratification. Like how important is delayed gratification when it comes to building wealth?
Totally.
Because I mean, obviously you're saying here, like I managed to do this in a year and managed to do this in 6 months or, 18 months and stuff. And that's kind of, crazy times, that you did, that Byron property.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. But how important is delayed gratification when it comes to building wealth and getting property? Because even development, it's like you're not buying a sexy property, you're buying a piece of crap land and you have to, wait probably another year or two until it's actually there.
Put lipstick on a pig.
Yeah,
They say. Like you're making it look pretty and it looks ugly at the moment. And that takes time, that takes patience. And most projects take on average anywhere from 1.5 to 3 years, some of them even 4 years. So it is delayed gratification. But when you work out the mathematics of getting it wholesale and at the end in 3 or 4 years time, it's going to be a retail price and you see what that margin is and that compounding that we spoke about and getting a return on your original investment, man, you never want to do anything else because you see that what you work in 40-hour weeks for somebody else, in most cases, most people go to uni and spend 40, 50 hours a week working for someone else. What they make in a year can be made out of one simple property transaction.
While you're still working.
Yeah. All right. And when you see enough of those happen, you don't really want to be working for someone else. You want to do it all the time because it's addictive. Because when you see money work for you rather than you working for money, it's hard to go back to the other way.
I don't think I ever could.
No,
like in the business and like the way I make money with sponsorships and a few things here and there and other stuff, it's like working. You sound privileged and kind of entitled almost, but it's like once you've had that taste of time for money, or the opposite, not time for money, leveraging your time. It's just, it is addictive. And I think it's something that, once again, should be taught in school.
100%.
The power of time. But I guess it's good because it means less competition.
That's true too. And maybe, the reason it's not taught in school, if you think about it, is because if everybody was a shepherd, there'd be no sheep.
Exactly, yeah.
And so they sort of need the sheep to keep the economy going.
Yeah.
Because they want everybody to have that same mindset. They don't want everybody to think about freedom because if we all thought about freedom, then there'd be no one turning up to work.
Yeah. But my logic is even if you taught it, only a tiny % would actually implement it anyway.
That's true too. Yeah. Only 2%. I actually said that when I was 18 years old and I went to that seminar I told you about 20 years ago. They actually said out of 3,000 people in the room, they said only 1 to 2% of you are going to listen and apply this. And I thought, wow, how can only 2% out of 3,000 people not want to do this? But it's true. It's true. So even if it's taught, it's still not applied.
Oh man, this personal development event, I was just, for teenagers we run, where I was teaching the money and finance section and stuff, Empower You for listening to the show, I talk about all the time. People come back 3, 4, 5, 6 times because it's like, you'll miss something and then they'll get motivation. Okay, now, and they won't implement till the 4th, 5th time or something. Or some people do it on the 1st, some people do it on the 3rd, some people will never implement it. Yeah. They'll just come back and back again. It's like, why do people do Tony Robbins every year?
Yeah.
It's like if it was that good, then why, and it changed your life.
It's true, yeah.
Why are you going back every year?
It's true. Yeah.
And so, I think implementation is one of the most important things.
Yeah.
Information's everywhere.
It's true. The best way to explain why you need Tony Robbins, because I think Tony Robbins is fantastic as well, is think of it about like a car. Your car needs servicing every year.
Yeah.
Right? You need to replace your tires. You need to get oil changes, all of that. Your mind needs that too. Your mind needs a service. It needs that refresh from a book or from a seminar or from meeting someone successful, from brainstorming, from hanging out with rich individuals who have already figured out how to make it. And that is like taking your car for a service, but you're taking your mind for a service. And when you do that, it gives you a whole new lease on life for the next year or for the next month or for whatever, but then it fizzles out again and then you need another service.
It's fleeting.
Right?
Motivation is very fleeting.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's the way. If you can stay motivated long enough and keep extending that motivation, sky's the limit.
Yeah. I think the key thing is you've got to be motivated and you've got to implement. Because I think that's where it gets dangerous when people are,
Totally
saving up just to go every year and they're never implementing anything people teach at these workshops
That's
or,
right.
these events. I think online courses, they say like 5% of people complete an online course.
People are trigger shy. That's what it is. They're afraid to start once they've learned it. So that's why I said in step number 2, you've got to apply it. Because if all you do is read about it and learn it and just read books your whole life and never apply it, what's the point? So you've got to apply it. And then once you apply it, the results will come.
And there are ways to do it. Like, there's parental stuff. What is it called? Parental guarantor.
Yeah, you can.
If you want to do stuff with your parents, if you pitch it to your parents, don't just say, "Hey, mum and dad, do you want to do this?" Pitch it. Go to them. Serve this up. If I save this much money, are you guys willing to invest this with me? And we could do this together.
Yeah.
Obviously, depends on your relationship with your parents, but I've heard a lot of people do that, and it's almost like the parents love it because it's like a bonding exercise with their kids.
I've even heard some parents, and obviously it depends on how well off your parents are.
Of course.
But I've heard some parents say to their children, whatever you save, I'll match it dollar for dollar. I've heard people say that too.
That's a dream.
Right? So, I mean, like, that's fantastic if you've got a parent that does that. But that their parents are just trying to encourage their kids to save.
Yeah.
All right. And because they know the importance of saving. But it's just, again, it's not taught in school.
Yeah.
It's not taught. And if it's taught, man, the world would be a different place.
Yeah. I mean, once again, the mindset I have is because it's not taught in school, that means less people know it, which means less competition, which means, more shepherds.
That's right. It's true.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, Andrew. Before we wrap up, I ask every guest final question, and it's just, what would your number one piece of advice be for your 18-year-old self, or maybe not your 18-year-old self, because that was back in 2000 or whatever,
2001,
but an 18-year-old in today.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to Gen Z or the younger generation?
Exactly what I said before, and I'll say it again. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So ask yourself, how can I? In whatever it is that you want to do, whatever industry, ask yourself the question, how can I, rather than say I can't. And if you say that to yourself, no matter what age you are, whether you're 18 or 20 or 30, 40, 50, 60, I know I've helped people that are 70 and they've only just started getting into property in their 70s, right? And that's because they didn't ask how can I back then, but they're asking it now. And it's not too late. So ask yourself, how can I? Think you can rather than think you can't, and watch what happens. Simple as that. Changing to anything.
Changing your thoughts can change
it's
your
all
life.
mindset.
It sounds stupid and cheesy almost.
It does. It sounds so cheesy, but it's so true.
Yeah,
it's so true. Yeah,
it's once again a personal development event actually for teenagers. We have 6 pillars, so there's 6 core ideas. We do flip charts. I think we have 50 flip charts by the end of the week, but 6 of them are the 6 most important ideas. Number 7 was that your thoughts dictate your feelings, your feelings dictate your actions dictate your results. So if you want to get better results, start off by get better thoughts.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. And if anyone's interested in reaching out to you, finding out more about your company and how to get in the property market, where's the best place to go?
So our website, kingdomdevelopments.com.au. You can check out what we're doing there and what we've already done. You can also call me. I don't mind actually getting phone calls. I love talking to young people and anybody actually, regardless of your age. My number is 0425 340 534 and my email is andrew@kingdomdevelopments.com.au.
Sounds good. And I'll put all that stuff linked in the show notes below. By the way, thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this entire episode of the podcast. The fact that you would sit there and listen to me for so long is awesome, and I love you for that. Thank you so much. Just real quick, I am starting to speak at schools a lot more frequently now. So if you're in Australia, specifically Sydney, and either you're a student, maybe you're a teacher, or you've got a brother or sister in school, or you have any connections at all and you want me to come speak at a school or any presenting things, I am looking to ramp that up a lot. I've got a really cool school talk I've been working on for a few months now. I've just started speaking at a bunch of schools. It's been going really well. Go to the link in the show notes or go to drivenyoung.com and you'll see school talks up the top and just click on that and send me an email. Otherwise, figure out any way to get in contact with me. I've also got the Sexual Assault podcast, which is now live with Brent Sanders. Go check that out. It's called Consent and Consequences. That is a Driven Young Productions podcast. It's something I'm very proud of. So there's lots going on. Definitely go check it all out. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening to this entire episode, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and week.